A former funeral director finally faces a judge a week after police announced they had found the body of a woman that had been left in a hearse in his backyard for a year and a half.
Talking about Miles Harford will face charges of abuse of a corpse, theft, and forgery. He was finally arrested last night in Englewood. Police had been looking for him for several days.
9 News consumer investigator Steve Steger has been following this story for a while. You've talked to a number of his former clients, and Steve, they wonder why it's taken so long to get here.
Yeah, 2 of them called Littleton Police back in 2022 concerned that Miles Harford wasn't getting them remains of their loved ones. They say everyone seemed to know that there were problems with the way that he was handling his business, but no one seemed to do anything.
A list of mortuaries to choose from.
When Suzanne Ball needed someone to care for her mother Ruth after her death on November 2nd of 2021, she picked Apollo Funeral and Cremation Services from that list. Miles Harford came, picked up her mother's body, and everything seemed fine until...
After a week or two, one of my friends said, "This is odd that you haven't heard from him." He texted me back and said, "Well, it's the holiday season and COVID, so things take longer."
All those weeks later, into January of 2022, the family didn't have her mom's remains.
It was weeks of not knowing where she was. It was, a lot of stress on the family.
It took weeks of sleuthing, begging. Finally, they figured out Mom was at a nearby crematorium.
We called them and they said, "Oh yeah, we've had your mom for 6 weeks. We just don't have your contact information."
Suzanne says her family contacted the cops about Miles, one of 2 phone calls to Littleton PD about Harford we saw in 2022.
They called us back and said, "Well, this is a civil matter."
They contacted the state's regulatory agency too and didn't get much of a response there either.
The fact that he was still in business after our ordeal, it's just amazing to me.
No one seemed to be able to stop him until
Miles Harford.
On Friday, Harford made his first appearance before a judge after he was arrested last night in Englewood.
24 CR 01179.
He'll face charges related to what police found during an eviction earlier this month. 35 urns full of cremated remains and the body of a woman who died a year and a half ago that had been decomposing in a hearse in the backyard ever since.
The information in the affidavit is extremely concerning to the court.
He'll likely be released later Friday on a personal recognizance bond.
Personal recognizance, because he's such an outstanding citizen. That's awesome. That's awesome.
For the families who've dealt with Harford, the arrest might mean the end of a difficult chapter.
The last few years of my mom's life was awful, and then this has to happen to her.
Now, according to an affidavit for Harford's arrests, of the 35 urns discovered at his property, the medical examiner has only been able to positively identify 18 of them. They're in the process now of notifying next of kin. You may recall yesterday, after a week of waiting for Harford to turn himself in, police released a bulletin looking for him, and this morning his attorney told the judge Harford had been in the hospital throwing off any arrangements to turn himself in. Englewood PD caught him last night when they responded to reports of an intoxicated man in the 4000 block of Fox Street. Tom.
Is that all we know at this point about the arrest? Because obviously police were very interested in him, a high-profile case like this, but it seems like they may have lost track of him for a couple of days.
Yeah, we know that in the early part of the week, it was a week ago today, they announced they had a warrant out for his arrest. In the early part of the week, Denver police told me they were working with his attorney on arrangements to get him to turn himself in. Then they sent that bulletin yesterday saying that they were looking for any information for him and trying to get him to turn himself in. And then this arrest last night at about 5:30. So it wasn't long after that bulletin went out that there was this arrest, and now he is temporarily at least in custody until released on that bond.
Well, this is a sad story, but it's far from over. Thanks for following it. We'll continue to follow it. Thanks, Steve.
Of course.